Israel Update with Gadi Tau and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It's been 1 year and 85 days to this war. It is the last day of 2024. I'm Gadi Tau in Tel Aviv, and joining me from Washington, D.C. at the Hudson headquarters is no other than Mr. Dr. Mike Duran. Shalom, Mike.
Hello, Gadi. I think what we should do, we should have a new intro. You should say, I'm Gadi Tau in Tel Aviv, and then I say, go ahead, say
it. I'm Gadi Tau in Tel Aviv.
And I'm Mike Duran in Washington, D.C. And we are as sane as possible under the circumstances.
Bidiyuk.
Okay? Because I know if I don't insist on this tagline, you're gonna let it drop.
No, I'm getting used to it.
All right, so let's go. I'm Gadi Tau in Tel Aviv. Go ahead.
I'm Gadi Tau in Tel Aviv.
And I'm Mike Duran in Washington, D.C.
In unison? You want it in unison?
No, you go ahead.
And we are as sane as possible under the circumstances. My best Walter Cronkite impression. Mike,
that's beautiful. That's our new opening. That's our new opening. That's how we're going to do it every time.
Let's head right into the news bulletin.
Okay, Gadi, there isn't really that much news. First, a shark attack off of Egypt's Red Sea coastline left a tourist dead and another injured. A 48-year-old man who was a resident of Rome died, while the injured man was 69. Shark attacks off the Red Sea really don't have much to do with Israel Update, but you just can't leave a shark attack out of the news, so I had to put it in there. The Famine Early Warning System Network last Wednesday took down a report it published a day earlier alleging persistent famine in northern Gaza. They took it down after Ambassador to Israel, that's the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, raised objections over the U.S.-funded agency's methodology. That agency is funded by the USAID. I put this in the news, Gadi, because I have a lot to say about this later. The state attorney's office, this is the Israeli state attorney's office, opposed in a filing to Tel Aviv District Court on Monday a request by Ari Rosenfeld, the IDF Intelligence Reserve non-commissioned officer, who was indicted for leaking top-secret documents. The state attorney's office opposed. Gadi, I've messed this one up, but I'm going to anyway, they are keeping the non-commissioned officer in detention. I wrote this incorrectly here, but they're keeping him in detention for the whole length of his trial. I'm sure you have a lot to say about that. Yeah. Several hundred people came to a demonstration in support of Ari Rosenfeld, and I think you were one of them. Well, we'll come back to you on that in a minute. Last night, the Houthis in Yemen launched their fifth missile attack on Israel. And Israeli officials ratcheted up their warnings to the Iranian-backed group. A couple of days ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu said, "We are determined to cut off this terrorist arm of Iran's evil axis. We will persist in this until we complete the task." That elevates destroying the Houthis to one of the goals of Israel in the war. Netanyahu underwent successful surgery on Sunday to have his prostate removed, a procedure that came as he manages multiple crises in the war, as well as his trial at home. Over to you, Gadi. Let's talk about Ari Rosenfeld, the NCO.
Yeah, as you said, I was on that vigil. We lighted the Hanukkah candles and sang the Hanukkah songs outside his jail. His father is a rabbi. He was given the honor to light the candles. Many members of Knesset and also a number of ministers. I remember Idit Silman, and who is the minister of environment, and Amichai Shikli, who is the minister of the diaspora, that I met there. Others may also have attended. And this is becoming a heated political issue in Israel, because you said on the news, and this is technically true, that he is charged with unauthorized leaking of documents that are top secret in the army. And And what is missing in that description is that he leaked them to the prime minister's office because his commanders refused to pass them on. So when a member of Knesset, Amit Halevi, came to speak at the vigil outside, he said, "We are the attorney, the state attorney, is punishing a loyal, patriotic soldier for doing a sensible, patriotic thing that is also not against the law. The fact that they are framing him according to a law designed to punish people who pass top secret documents to the enemy is a complete charade. Because, as you know, we have had a major crisis after the Yom Kippur War, about which you wrote and also translated successfully the Hebrew description of what this failure was. We use the word mechdal. Mike, what would you say mechdal is?
It's an act of omission that has very detrimental consequences.
Wow, that was Webster precise. And so this is the failure of the intelligence on the eve of the Yom Kippur War is, until October 7, was considered the failure. In fact, it's one of the classic failures of intelligence that they teach in intelligence schools around the world, along with the inability of the Allies to foresee the invasion of Russia by the Nazis in the Operation Barbarossa. So it's a classic case of a blindness and groupthink by the intelligence. And after that war, there was a commission that said that in order to remedy this, there would be a group within the intelligence called Ipcha Mistabra, which is, I think, Aramaic for the opposite, the logical opposite.
I never heard of this group before. I thought I had read all about this. So tell me again, what's the Aramaic?
The Aramaic is Ipcha Mistabra. Mistaber is what is
Ipcha
argued.
Mistabra.
And Ipcha is like hafuch, is the opposite. But it's Aramaic, which is close to Hebrew, but not exactly Hebrew. And the role of this group is to provide a contrary interpretation of the same material. And the other conclusion that the commission arrived at was that if there is an officer anywhere in the intelligence community that thinks that some idea has been quashed and some interpretation is wrong, he is allowed by law to pass this on to the superiors of his commanders.
Interesting.
If he thinks it's important and urgent. And this is also, it's not just a law, it's also a myth that at least I grew up on, because my father and mother were friends with Avi Kiari, which was a high officer in the intelligence in Yom Kippur. And on the eve of the attack, he bypassed his own commanders and went with information to the division in the north saying there is a war coming. And he was caught, and they were supposed to punish him, except after the war broke out, he received a commendation for what he did.
Any relation to Ehud Yaari?
No. There's a relation to Meir Yaari, the legendary leader of one faction in labor Zionism. So he is a salt of the earth of Zionism, and Avik, I knew him very well. He's an honest, intelligent military guy, straight arrow, who just saw a war coming and said that my commanders would not pass this warning to the division that's on the front line, so it's my moral duty, regardless of the law, to just do it. So Ari Rosenfeld did something like that, and he received an indictment, and in the indictment they are saying some of it is redacted, and it says that Ari Rosenfeld is charged with creating a bypass route of passing information to the prime minister's office over and above all the levels of the command above him, And then the redacted thing saying that some of this information had to do with black, another or a foreign body or organization, something like that. And I had one friend who was pedantic enough to check with the same font what fits in the redacted part. And it seems that the right size is the Palestinian Authority. So there is an interpretation going around, which we can't confirm. I interviewed for my Hebrew podcast a former officer in the intelligence. He was the head of the terror division of Amman, of the army intelligence, and he is convinced that this is it. So think what this might mean, Mike. This might mean that the army has been concealing from the prime minister involvement of the Palestinian Authority in the planning of October 7th. This information may or may not be true, but if some non-commissioned officer held that information and thought it was withheld from the prime minister, he saw it as his duty to pass this on. And my last remark on this is especially we on the right, are very quick to believe that the top brass of the IDF are still looking for a way to return to the so-called two-state solution. And therefore, they are determined not to bring to the attention of elected politicians any damaging information for the Palestinian Authority. So that's where things stand now. Except, well, I should also mention that, as Netanyahu himself said in press conferences, many other leaks are not investigated. Just to give an example, I think I mentioned here, the leak to the chiefs, the brass of the IDF were against the beeper operation, and they tried to stop it. So on the eve of the beeper operation, they leaked to Ronen Bergman in Yediot Achronot that the government is about to do a rash thing in Lebanon, which could ignite a regional war. This is in accord with the same line of thinking of the Biden administration. And so they leaked something.
And the U.S. intelligence, we now know. So they got it all. They all got it wrong. So wrong.
Completely wrong. But they tried to stop the war from erupting also in Lebanon. So that leak is not investigated. There are many other examples. I won't give them now, but Netanyahu gave a whole list of leaks that are not investigated. Why is this leak investigated? Because some people believe there is an attempt to use this opportunity in order to continue concealing information from the prime minister by making an example of Ari Rosenfeld of what can happen to you if you create a bypass route of information to the prime minister's office.
Well, that's very interesting. That's going to connect up to what I want to talk about next, which is actually the January surprise that the Biden administration is planning for Israel, or
let's tradition say, of the Obama administration and 2334.
Exactly, some elements of it. Before we move to that, let me just say a little footnote. When I worked in the White House was 2005 to 7. Also I worked after that in the Defense Department. I got a daily intel brief, and there was a product that the intel community regularly produced called the Red Cell, which was exactly what you're talking about, the Ibcha
Mistabra.
Yeah. Ibcha Mistabra. I love that, even though I don't understand it. It has a great sound to it. This was something that came out of the 9/11 Commission. That said that we were surprised by 9/11, and one of the ways to improve the predictions of the intelligence community was to have a red cell, a group that would come up with alternative analyses. I'm not an expert on intelligence, and I don't want to besmirch all of the efforts that these people, good faith efforts they put into creating something useful. my impression was that it didn't really work, because when you have a concepcia when the top brass believes something, it's impossible to create an organization outside of the organization that is really going to go against them, because it will harm your career.
Exactly. Which is why the member of Knesset Amit Halevi was fighting this fight for Ari Rosenfeld. He was also a member of the Foreign and Security Commission Committee of the Knesset. Has suggested, has put forth a bill, which is supposed to create an Ipcha Mistabra outside the army, because he said what happens is a charade with Ipcha Mistabra. What they do is they bring a contrary opinion and make it so ridiculous that
exactly that's exactly what they do, right? Or they go after things that are really marginal. Every now and then they wrote something I found interesting, but the big question when I was in the White House was Iran and its role in the region. They never produced the alternative take on Iran, which is that, for example, we had a huge debate about whether Iran was killing Americans in Iraq. We now know that Iran was killing Americans in Iraq, and eventually the intel community came around to understand that. But the red cell never went after any of the really big juicy questions that had an impact on policy. Okay. Anyway, Gadi,
surprise.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I promised our loyal, intelligent, dedicated viewers. Am I pandering too much? I promised them that I said that I had the goods on what the Biden administration had planned for Israel, and I would put it out in a separate video. I never got around to doing that. I've been very busy, so I thought you and I should just talk about it now. So maybe I'll just start by telling you in general terms what they have planned. The January surprise is modeled directly on the January surprise of the Obama administration in 2016. That is UN Resolution 2334, which basically, to put it a little bit crudely, recognized the green line. That is the June 67, the 5 June 67 ceasefire lines that separated Israel from Jordan as an international boundary. So any development that Israel has made to the east of the Green Line since the 67 war is recognized by the UN as an illegal settlement, as a settlement activity, and including the Western Wall is occupied territory. So lots of neighborhoods. The Israeli government has expanded the municipality of Jerusalem since 67, and lots of neighborhoods that any Israeli today regards as Israel proper are regarded by 2334 as illegal Israeli settlements. That's what Barack Obama did for the Israelis. Kicked the Netanyahu government in the groin as it was leaving office in 2016, but it did it in a very devious way. Without going into all the details, they let others marshal this resolution through the UN Security Council and then abstained. So New Zealand was one of the major actors marshaling this through the Security Council. Clearly, New Zealand was not acting alone. New Zealand was encouraged by the Obama administration to do this, and then the Obama administration stood back and didn't vote for it. Why? Because it wants to have it both ways. It wants to get the resolution, but it wants to be able to claim plausibly before its Zionists, the democratic Zionists, it wants to say, "Oh well, we didn't really do that." Right? Or we weren't the ones who did it. We just stood back. This is the international community speaking, and we didn't feel that we could intervene. So you get to have it both ways. The Biden administration is planning something similar right now. There is an item in U.S. law Section 620I of the Foreign Assistance Act, which says that any country that is blocking U.S. humanitarian aid will have its military assistance cut off. Now, this is, you remember there was a letter. There was a letter that Secretary of State Blinken and Secretary of Defense Austin sent to Israel, saying that if you continue to block humanitarian shipments to Gaza, we will cut off all military aid. That's based on 620I. So what they want to do, the January surprise, is that there will be an official finding by the State Department that Israel is in violation of 620I. It's blocking humanitarian aid to Gaza. And then what will happen is that the president will waive the penalties for the blocking of the humanitarian aid. But there will have been an official American finding. Then the ball will move from the State Department. There will be an official American finding, but there will be no penalties to Israel. So again, the administration gets to have it both ways. Finds Israel guilty, but is not, but then says, well, we're not going to do anything about it. But there's the official finding, and then the ball moves to the Security Council, where Algeria or Slovenia will take it and get a UN resolution that will punish Israel in some way. The United States again will either support the resolution or abstain, depending upon the wording of it.
Not veto it.
Not veto it. No. Will not veto it. It will either, it will, and these anti-Israel resolutions go through automatically unless the United States stops them. But in this case, the United States will be, like it put New Zealand, like the Obama administration put New Zealand forward in 2016, they're going to encourage Slovenia or Algeria or some other member of the Security Council to do this. Once the Security Council finds it, then we go to step 3, which is that this resolution and the American official finding will be used by the ICJ, the ICC, etc., against Israel, and you'll have an official American finding for that. Then, of course, you'll have any number of other bodies, including the EU or who knows which other international body will use this in order to put pressure on Israel. That's the January surprise that's coming. And I've done. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask how advanced is this plan, and is it moving forward?
Oh, that's exactly what I wanted to say, actually, because it isn't clear whether it's going to happen. There are two camps in the Biden administration fighting over this, and we saw it last week. That's why I put in the news about this, about the famine alert that the contractor funded by USAID put out, and U.S. Ambassador to Israel Jack Lew opposed it. He criticized the report in very strong language, saying that it was full of erroneous figures, which it was, and they took it down immediately. That was an early fight in this. That was an early sign of this fight that's going on in the skirmish that's going on in the administration. There are two groups that are fighting it out, or really one group. The fight is not that strong. There's a whole network of people who are pushing this. The big question is whether the president and the Secretary of State are going to sign on to it or not. But the plan has been well developed. In the end, Biden and Blinken may decide against it. It's not at all clear. But I've been looking into this stuff. You remember I wrote an article a few months ago about the anti-Israel sanctions machine that the Biden administration created. Yeah. So since then I've been trying to find out who are the individuals who are behind this. And of course, this is the machine that produces all of those sanctions monthly. It's these same elements. So the two key players who were behind that letter that Austin and Blinken sent to Israel originally. They are Barbara Leaf, who's the Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs, and Uzra Zeya, who is the Undersecretary of State for Democracy and Human Rights. They are key players in this effort. The action officer, the two main action officers for the current round are two women. One named Lise Grand, and she is the special envoy for Middle East humanitarian issues. Also working closely with her on this is Margaret Taylor, who's the legal advisor for the Department of State. But before she's only recently confirmed in the position as legal advisor. Before that, she was she was working in USAID, which is led by Samantha Power, who is a big supporter of this. So Samantha Power is offering a lot of effort. But this whole thing, it's a multi-agency effort. We have in the White House John Feiner, Deputy National Security Advisor. He's supporting it. Curtis Reed, the Chief of Staff in the White House. In the office of the UN ambassador, because there will be a UN element to this, is Ned Price. You remember Ned Price? He was the spokesman of the State Department for a while, but before that, he worked for Ben Rhodes in the Obama State Department. There are this also has the support, unfortunately, of the Deputy Secretary of State, Kurt Campbell, who is somebody who's kind of got a realist view of the world. I wouldn't have expected him to be supportive of this, but he's supporting it. The big hero here, the guy in the administration who has been openly against it. I mean, when I say openly, inside the administration debates, is Derek Chollet. He's the chief of staff. He's the chief of staff for the Secretary of Defense. I know him. I don't know him well. I've been on at events with him and so on. I've never agreed with him about the Middle East. Obviously, because he's coming out of the Obama worldview. But I've always found him to be very rational, very pleasant, and very intelligent. And I was particularly happy to learn that he's really trying to put the brakes on this thing. As I say, an interesting little element here. There are two guys in the White House who are against this, and I'm happy to see that. And these are people that I don't usually praise. But one of them is Brett McGurk. I learned from Israeli sources that Israelis are generally aware of this effort. I don't think they have it. I don't think they understand it to the detail that I have laid out here. They may, if they, and just not be telling me. But I did learn from them that they have a sense that Brett McGurk is their guy. It's one of the reasons they like him so much. My problem with Brett McGurk is he's trying to hand the Middle East to the Iranians, but he doesn't. He isn't part of this effort to hammer the Israelis with the Palestine question. So Brett McGurk, but also Amos Hochstein. So McGurk and Hochstein, who played a significant role inside the administration in getting the administration to acquiesce in the Israeli incursions into Lebanon, are also playing a good role here. I like this kind of thing because it's interesting to me. Why it's always important to me not to have an ideological view of the world because people surprise you sometimes. So anyway, McGurk, Chollet, and Hochstein, they're playing a good role here. Jake Sullivan is on the fence, which is Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor. That's not a surprising thing because the National Security Advisor has to be an honest broker and just put the things before the president to decide. The big question here is this thing is ready to go. The question is, will Blinken sign on to it? Blinken has several times arrested efforts to move this kind of thing forward. He may do it again. The other question is
also interesting because he was so committed to removing Netanyahu. I mean, he never said it out loud, but he engineered half of these moves that were intended to undermine Netanyahu. Also visibly in Israel, because if you come to Israel and you meet the committee of the families of the hostages. You know, it's a political operation against Netanyahu, and so forth. So why is Blinken not taking a side here?
I don't know, or well, kind of. I think he's tilting against, but he's got to make a decision here at the end. And I know from discussions with the Israeli officials that there's no love for him in the Netanyahu government for the reasons that you say. But he's got he's got the limits on how far he'll go. I wish we could have a very candid conversation with somebody like Anthony Blinken or Amos Hochstein, where they would really come clean and really open kimono, explain exactly why they put limits where they do, and so on. They probably never will, because this lobby here, this interest organization now, that inside the State Department and inside the progressive movement, it's such a part of the democratic worldview that anyone who wants to have a position in good standing at the top of the Democratic Party has to get along with these people. Or let's say the smartest thing to do, the wisest thing to do, if you want to have a position, is to get along with them and not come out and criticize them. But I think that there are a number of things that need to be done in order to prevent this from happening. I think that the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, I think Donald Trump, it would be nice if he would signal, particularly to Algeria and Slovenia, that if they go forward with this, they'll pay a huge price when he comes in. That they are actually, and that this really has, Slovenia does not have interests in the Palestinian-Israeli affairs. And it should just butt out. This is really, it's allowing itself to be used by one party in the United States against another party. This is really a kind of domestic political thing, and it should think twice about that, because if it allows itself to be used that way, it'll suffer the consequences. I think Congress should also, major figures in the Senate, on Capitol Hill, in the Senate and the House of Representatives, should stand up and also express hostility to this. I think Congress should also promise hearings on the anti-Israel sanctions machine, of which all of this is a part.
Are there members of Congress among the Friends of Israel, say the usual people that we can trust in the Senate, like Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, and a few others, Lindsey Graham, perhaps? Is there first of all, are they aware of what is going on?
I haven't. I think they're aware in general terms, of course, because this is some of it has been reported in the media. The fights over the humanitarian assistance and designating Israel as being not in compliance, etc. They're aware of that. They're aware of who these people are in general. But I don't know if they know. I don't know that they know that this plan exists. I haven't seen anyone explain this plan as I have. I've been dedicated to uncovering this. Although it is quite kind of amazing that this is something of a scoop, I think, actually. And why don't we get this from the press, Scotty? I'll let you. Will you explain why don't we get this from the press, Scotty?
First of all, now everybody will know, because I know for a fact that all senators are waiting impatiently for any episode we upload. So now it is going to be common wisdom, so we can call them to action. And yes, Mike, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say it's true. Yes, of course. We know that everyone is sitting on the edge of their seat waiting for the latest episode of Israel Update. Of
course, at least anyone who is sane, because we are
as sane as possible under the circumstances.
I can do that to you too. This is indeed a scoop. I haven't heard it anywhere else, and it's a good idea to also inform our Israeli audiences. By the way, our Israeli audience is not small at all. Many listen to this English version, but we also produce one with Hebrew subtitles for Hebrew speakers, and it makes very nice number on my channel, on Gatekeeper podcast channel.
I'd love to see hearings. I would love to see all of these people that this is why I'm naming names, because I'm naming names for two reasons. One, in the vain hope that some real journalist out there will actually investigate this. I'm sure that they will find out that I'm 100% correct on all of this. Number two, I hope that there will be hearings. We need to dismantle the anti-Israel machine that the Democrats have built inside the State Department. A lot of these people are, of course, the ones I'm named here. These are political appointees who are going to wash out. But this is now a culture that's embedded in the State Department, in the Human Rights Bureau, in USAID. Anyone that's dealing with human rights or with aid.
But this is so not new, Mike. The State Department, at least this is the common knowledge in Israel, the State Department is always unsympathetic to Israel, as it was against recognizing the state of Israel in 1948. So this is a new incarnation of something that's embedded in the bureaucracy.
It's a new incarnation, but it is different in that it's located in these particular bureaus, mm-hmm. and I think that they can be. I think anyone working on this should be fearing all. We're talking about hundreds of people. Are working on this, Gadi. If you think about all these senior officials in all these different bureaus who are working on this, there are at least dozens. Maybe let me not exaggerate. Dozens of people are working on this. An enormous amount of creativity and man hours and legal analysis is going into this to produce these sanctions every month and to come up with this whole very sophisticated maneuver. This takes dozens and dozens of people. They should all be worrying that association with this effort will harm their careers. They should. And that's why we can have, why Congress should get involved, why there should be hearings. And I'll tell you something else, Gadi, that from an Israeli point of view, Israelis should want to know what Israeli organizations are feeding information to this machine. That should be part of the hearings. Who are the NGOs or the Israeli officials who understand how this machine works and who are helping it function, giving it leads, and so on? I'm sure they exist.
I can tell you for one, because I'm a subscriber to their newsletter, is that J Street has been trying to lobby the Biden administration to put greater pressure on Israel via arms embargo and other means in order to stop the war. This is J Street is a radical anti-Israeli organization, which I'm sure serves this machine in more than one way because it's their manifest agenda. So.
And we find out, we learned from this another scoop that Gadi Taub is a subscriber to the J Street newsletter. every time they call me dear, Gadi, for one thing. and secondly, you pay the money for that because they're the only people who call you dear?
No, but they keep asking me for donations, and it itches to me to write something vicious back. But we'll see. Since I don't believe that many of our listeners are members of J Street, I'm not sure that revealing this detail will put a stop to my receiving their newsletter, which I keep using against them. I keep doing screenshots of parts of it to tell Israelis, look what this organization is doing to try and sabotage our war effort in the middle of a dangerous situation. It's just unbelievable. And they keep saying that it's tough love. That's the thing. The thing with radical leftist Jewish organizations is that they can always read behind this veil of tough love that they are saving Israel from itself. But now, as we are fighting a war, clearly an embargo on weapons is not a way to save us from ourselves.
Let me add one more thing about all this, about why it matters, because there might be a response to say, look, 2334 came out, and then Trump came in, and what difference does it make? because Trump's not going to pay any attention to any of this, and he's going to have completely different policies. It matters because this is part of a larger effort. They've worked it like American lawyers, to focus in on this particular issue of the humanitarianism. But really, it's part of a whole strategy. When the war began on October 7th, the Biden administration decided on its war aims on that day, basically, and they decided on two things. One was they wanted to preserve the outreach to Iran, and they kept that all along the way. So they distanced Iran from the event. They never took action against Iran. They put pressure on Israel not to take action against Iran, and they tried to contain the war to Gaza and not to move to Hezbollah. And they tried to bring a ceasefire about in Gaza early. Then, as we've said many times, they opposed Israel going into Gaza, opposed it going into Gaza City, Khan Yunis, Rafah, etc., etc., etc. So they wanted to stop the war, and they wanted to make sure, and this is at the center of their consciousness, and this is all of them, not just the zealots here that I have described, this network of Obama-style zealots. They wanted to make sure that the Israeli right did not benefit from the war, because they understood that the two-state solution, the prestige of the Palestinian Authority, the two-state solution was in danger, that there was going to be a backlash in Israeli society against all of those policies coming out of Oslo, and they wanted to preserve it. And this is central to the worldview of the Democratic Party going back to Clinton. So it's natural that they would go there. It wasn't simply a response to October 7th.
Going back to Jimmy Carter, actually.
Going back to Jimmy Carter, sure. They see their job as weakening the Israeli right. That's a strategic aspiration of the United States, is in their view. So what they're trying to do, the policy, they're trying to undo the longstanding policy of the United States, which is to seek peace between Palestinians and Israelis, or between Israel and any of its antagonists, through bilateral negotiations without preconditions. So the Israelis are to sit down with Palestinian representatives and negotiate directly with each other and arrive at conclusions between themselves. The United States will facilitate, but it will not dictate the terms ahead of time. What they are trying to do willy-nilly through all of this international law and all of these parameters for peace, which they are pushing, is to actually dictate the terms of peace. So they are, what did 2334 do? It said the border between Palestine and Israel should be the green line. That's basically what it says. John Kerry had further parameters for peace that he wanted to put into a UN resolution, which didn't get through in 2016 because Putin wasn't going to play ball. But he then gave a major speech with the Kerry parameters. The Kerry parameters are still alive in the culture of the Democratic Party. We're going to see, before Biden leaves office, we're going to see a major speech by Biden and probably one by Blinken about the Israeli-Palestinian relations, or there'll be something about the Middle East with a long segment about Israeli-Palestinian relations, and there will be a revisiting of the Kerry parameters and a definition of what peace should be, which moves us further and further toward an imposed settlement on Israel, which doesn't require the Palestinian Authority to lift a finger against terrorism, to recognize Israel, to recognize the Jewish state. It rewards, in other words, the terrorism of Hamas by granting the Palestinians statehood or near statehood without ever having this bilateral negotiation.
Yeah, and this ties into the hopes of the Israeli left, which I described here, I think, many times, that having given up on persuading the Israeli public to go for partition, they are pinning all their hopes on external imposition, which is why they are also cooperating, I'm sure, with the sanctions machine, as they are also cooperating with other anti-Israeli efforts, especially when they are wrapped in the clothes of human rights, such as the infamous Goldstone report, such as the B'Tselem going to the Security Council and trashing Israel for violating human rights, and all the other, and also, as you remember, a speech by the publisher of Haaretz, Amos Shokin, who called for international sanctions on Israel in order to create, by coercion on Israel, a Palestinian state without demanding anything from the Palestinians. Shokin said that the people, the Palestinian freedom fighters, whom Israel calls terrorists, and so there's cooperation here between the left, which has given up on Israeli democracy, and the American administration. Mike, it's New Year's Eve, and we still have a lot on our agenda. We want to answer listeners' comments, which were, this time there was a deluge of them after your discussion.
Deluge. Now somebody's going to write back and tell me that you actually pronounced it correctly. That, in Scotland they say deluge, but
I have a friend.
In Scottish English is deluge.
I have a friend with a Scottish accent who speaks Hebrew, but I always ask her to speak English because I love the Scottish accent. You probably know the Scottish sketch with an elevator that's voice activated, and two Scots are trying to tell it to reach floor 11, and it can't. It just doesn't get it. 11. So let's go to listeners' comments, and then we have a nice surprise for you with a great scoop on the beeper, the beeper operation.
I never let you make a transition. Can I say one more thing about this whole sanctions issue?
Sure.
One of the things, someday I'll let you just do a clean transition.
That would be traumatic, Mike.
One of the things that I find
consider my interventions like an advance warning that somewhere in the future we will change.
That we're about to go to a new topic. One of the things that I find fascinating about it, and one of the reasons why I put so much attention into this and getting this information, is that the Democrats are extraordinarily talented at these policy dualities. We've seen it throughout the war. The Biden administration has been kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde character, where 1 minute it says Israel has a right to defend itself, and on the other hand it says Israel's behaving in an extreme manner, or violating international law, or violating international humanitarian law and causing enormous suffering and so on. And you never know who you're going to get when you're talking to the Biden administration. Are you getting the Jekyll or Hyde there? Israelis see that and they say, oh, well, the Americans are confused. No, they're not confused. They know exactly what they're doing. They're having it both ways. And they do it very successfully, and they do it with intention. They do it on the Iran policy, for example. As you know, I've been saying since 2015 that Obama and Biden are trying to align the United States with Iran. And for when I first started saying that in 2015, most Democrats, when they heard it, would just roll their eyes and say it was a cockamamie conspiracy theory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as my arguments gained more and more purchase, then the defense of the Democrats became more, well, you have too much of you see too much policy clarity in what they're doing. They're confused, and yes, some people want to do what you're saying, but others don't. And there's a good cop and there's a bad cop, et cetera, without seeing that there's actually the good cop, bad cop routine is really part of the whole thing. And this thing shows you the extent to which that is true. The way they have designed this whole thing to get an official American certification of something and then to hand it off to somebody else so that they'll do the dirty work with it. This is actually built into the whole plan. And if they do it, if Biden signs off on it, that is the policy. It isn't confusion. It is a conscious duality.
All right. So to the comments now.
To the comments. So, Gadi, the debate between me and Don Shuftan.
It's a major hit.
It was a major hit for us. On YouTube, we had about 16,000 views, I think. So I guess my rule of thumb, I tried to look into this at one time. It's very hard to know how many people listen to this, not on YouTube. But it's at least double what we get on YouTube, I think. Probably, maybe even triple. So we had well over 30,000, well over 40,000 listens on this. We had many. We had hundreds of comments on the YouTube video, and dozens on Rumble. They break down into four categories. Those who the smartest people who said I won the debate. The very smart,
the quality minority, you mean?
Oh, you just walked all over my punchline. Yeah, because it was the minority, right? So you stomped all over my bit here, because there are the others who are also very intelligent because they're our viewers. But not quite as intelligent as the Mike 1 ones. And those are the ones who say Don won. Then there's two other groups. Those who just said great conversation. Some of them said, actually, I agree with both Mike and Don. And then another group that just said they keyed off on one or other issue and wanted to discuss it or clarify it or tell us something interesting about it. Unfortunately,
let's just remind anyone who's jumping into this debate without seeing the last episode that this was a debate about whether or not Israel could come to some accommodation with Turkey in Syria. So Dan basically said no, and you said yes.
Yes, and the numbers in favor of Don, among those who said either Mike won or Don won, it was 3 or 4 to 1 against me, which was very hard for me to take. I've been weeping all week long. And there were also some people who said very unkind things about me, Gadi. One person said...
Oh, how could that be?
I know. It's really sad. One person said, I actually want to ask... I want to ask help. Somebody said that I say... my voice is annoying. I can't do anything about that. But I say too much. And I actually agree with them, and I just want to ask our viewers, because I'm 62 years old. I've always gotten out in the middle of a sentence and not been able to finish it in every language. It's just a quality, and I say I hate it. I have no idea how to get over it. But maybe there's a speech therapist or something else. Maybe there is a technique. If anyone knows of a way, of a method, I would love to hear it. Other than just know what the hell you want to say before you start, which is...
Do you know why there's such a long gap between when we record and when we post our episode, Mike?
Why is that?
Because I spend some 3 or 4 hours splicing off the ums. There's like 400 of them, and I just one by one.
You're lying. You're lying. That was... you had me going for half a second.
Yeah,
I
saw it in your eyes.
That was really cruel. That was really... No, I am actually particularly sensitive about that. So because there's nothing I can do about it. Nothing I've ever figured out how to do about it. Okay, so let's see. What can I say? What can I say about this? I actually think I won. I don't think Don won, but of course that's natural. I want to say that I agree with those people, Gadi, who said that they agree with both Mike and Don. I don't think that's a ridiculous position. And because I don't think that the people who say Don won, they typically say Mike is naive. Erdogan is a jihadi. He hates Israel. Therefore, there's nothing, I don't think that begins to answer the arguments I made. What's in Erdogan's heart, even his long-term goals or aspirations, I don't think it matters, because I say that there are all kinds of restrictions on his ability to, even if he had those aspirations, there are restrictions on his ability to carry them out. So I still think the wiser policy for Israel is, even if he has all those aspirations, is to try to find an accommodation with Israel, with Turkey, of the kind that I mentioned, and then see what happens. If it goes wrong, you can always go to total conflict. That's not there's nothing to, you don't have to go to total conflict today. That's my point.
One of the surprising takeaways for me was, as the moderator of this specific episode, was that I think you could agree at least on Israel's policy vis-a-vis the PKK. That there is now done agreed that there is no need now to lock arms with the PKK against Turkey in North Syria. However, we will be following this issue, since I think we had on this program two of the foremost experts.
No, I have one more thing to say. I'm not going to let you transition here yet.
One day, this humiliating ritual will encounter my so far very flexible ego, and I will fall back on my many years of experience as moderator of many panels and shows and say, no, Mike, thank you. Well, you also have the, as you mentioned, you have the editor's prerogative as well. Yeah. But I just want to read to you my favorite comment, which is by a guy named Deaf Prophet. Okay, and he says, this guy Mike is a typical American galutnik, secular leftist Jew with a ghetto mentality. He lives in the world of concepcia and ideas. These are in quotation marks, of concepcia and ideas. His quote-unquote thoughts are not based on facts. And I just want to say, Deaf Prophet, you are really on top of the facts. You've really got them. You see right through me. By the way, for the minority of people out there who don't know what a galutnik is, galut is the diaspora. He's saying I'm a diaspora Jew who's got all of these left-wing misconceptions about the Muslims, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Deaf Prophet, I'm a Christian. I'm a Catholic. I'm not a Jew. I'm not in the galut. But you are still in the galut. You know, there was a joke in Israel about this Jewish brilliant guy who couldn't get into Eton, which is the school of the upper class in England, and a friend of his says, well, what did you write in your application? And he said, well, I did everything right. He said, what did you write under religion? He said, I wrote goy. And they So, Mike, you are a galut Christian, diaspora Christian. Beseder, okay. So instead of we will say something shortly about the wishes for the new year. But before that, Mike, I want to show you a leaked video from 60 Minutes of all the parts that they cut out and left on the editing room floor from their expose of the Grim Reaper operation. Listen to this. It's actually quite amazing.
Okay.
How did you convince Hezbollah to buy this?
It was very easy. We took a woman, she's a salesman. She's a very good salesman. She has a unique way to sell you stuff. You know, every time I go to her store, I come, I don't want to buy nothing, and I go out from the store, buy a lot of stuff that I don't need. So I told to myself, this is the woman that we need. She will sell for us.
Wow, Gadi, the Mossad has some amazing assets. I didn't even imagine that those existed.
Yeah, and there are some other assets which we are not able to show you on this PJ-13 rated program. So there you go. And now what should we wish? What should we wish ourselves?
I will forever be a 5-year-old boy. Certain things make me laugh. Okay, go ahead.
So what shall we wish ourselves, Israel, our viewers, the United States, or what do you want to make predictions or just wishes?
I'll make one prediction and one wish. It seems to me obvious that the Houthis are going to be taken down a severe notch, and then this seems to me to be obvious. You can already see one of the amazing things that happened during the war is that Israel and the United States militarily began converging against the Houthis. So that you have a level, it looks to me, I haven't got the details on it, but it looks to me like you have a level of military coordination against the Houthis that we have not seen against any other enemy before. If I were General Kurilla, the commander of U.S. CENTCOM, I would be waiting with bated breath for the arrival of the Trump administration and new rules of action, rules of engagement against the Houthis, because CENTCOM has its hands tied with respect to the Houthis. It can't feel good to be the commander of the American forces in the Middle East and to have this ragtag militia shooting at you, make fun of you, shooting at you daily, and you can't do anything about it. And they even put out statements saying it's impossible to do anything, when of course it's not impossible. So I suspect that Israel and CENTCOM are going to get together very quickly, and the Houthis are in for a rude awakening, just as Prime Minister Netanyahu said. Having said that, it's interesting to note. I did a little bit of research on the Houthis in the last month or two, and it's important to understand that they don't see themselves as we do. We see them as an appendage of Iran, as an appendage of Hezbollah, as the kind of weak younger brother to Hezbollah.
A node in the noose that Iran has tied around us.
Yeah, a node in the noose that Iran has tied. That's not how they see themselves. They see themselves as an independent actor on the world stage. They think that Hezbollah is a bunch of wussies, and that they are the real deal. And they are actually quite as we're seeing, they're a pretty serious adversary. I think that the combined military power of the United States and Israel should be able to handle them. But of course, Yemen is a very big place with lots of mountains and so on, lots of places to hide. Maybe I don't know exactly what the military challenge is. We're going to find out. But I think we're going to see them knocked down severely very early in the year.
That here in Israel, there is a wave of jokes about the Houthis. There are waves of comedians doing a Yemenite dance and saying, "How can we take these people seriously? They chew gut all the time, and they do these strange dances." And because of the place of Yemenites in Hebrew in Israeli culture and what they're associated with, a certain accent, a certain folklorish dancing, a certain gay demeanor, and the picture of them, you remember them dancing on the ship? Yes. There was a group of Houthis dancing on the ship. That played into every Israeli stereotype about the Yemenites. So even as we go nightly in Tel Aviv, we go to the I'm on the second floor, and in the basement of this building is our safe room. So all the building congregates nightly, because once every night, not more, we have a Houthis missile coming in, and we all go down there and know each other's pets. And in there too, in that intimate surrounding, there are now nightly jokes about the Houthis. So apparently Israelis think that this is funny, after at least contrasted with what we thought Hezbollah can do to Israel. There were front pages saying 15,000 civilian casualties.
Right. Well, one of those ballistic missiles coming from Yemen are serious things. So far, so good, but it just takes one to hit, and you'll have a mass casualty. One
of them, as you remember, hit a school at night and completely destroyed it. Imagine what that would be if the school was operating during the study hours. So the prediction is that the Houthis will be taken down a few notches. What is the wish?
My wish is that Iran will be too. I'm not 100% sure, as I think I said on an earlier podcast here. I'm not 100% sure that the Trump administration is going to back Israel 100% militarily against the Iranian nuclear program. We'll find out. That's the big question. I came into this thinking about a prediction, and I thought, do I want to predict that that the Trump administration is going to do this? I certainly hope it will. I will advocate for it. I know there will be a lot of people inside the Trump administration advocating for it, but there's going to be a major effort to, I think, restrain the Israelis by some elements in the Trump administration to restrain the Israelis. It'll be interesting to see how that unfolds.
So my prediction is that Israel is going to hit the nuclear program regardless of what an American administration will do. First of all, it will assume that the Trump administration will not be hostile to such a move as was the Biden administration. Trump himself said when Israel was planning a retaliation for the second Iranian attack on Israel, Trump himself said, "Isn't the whole point hitting their nuclear program?" So I think that there would at least be understanding, and that we can assume a much greater freedom of action. Also, Netanyahu has been preparing for this exactly his whole political life. We can now say, looking back, that for 20 years now, this is terrorism and Iran have been his themes, and he is now in his element. You can see it in all his speeches. You can see in the way he behaves vis-a-vis a very hostile press. He's also at the height of his confidence, and his whole demeanor is one of offense now. And I think that he is primed to do exactly that. As for my wishes, my wish is that we would not be satisfied with taking out the nuclear program, and we would make an effort to facilitate an overthrow of the regime or a collapse of the regime, encouraged by the fact that we have cut almost all of the octopus's arm, and that in accord with the general philosophy of the Trump administration about economic pressure, we would be able to counter to supplement economic pressure with military pressure, and hopefully free the Iranian people from their tyrants. And we know that many Iranians will be happy to join that effort. Let's remember that they have rose against their regime, and just to be let down by two separate democratic administrations. I think it was 2011, Mike, that Obama turned a cold shoulder to the protesters in Tehran, and now under the Biden administration, the hijab protest, and again this reckless administration with its appeasement policy turned a blind eye and a cold shoulder to this protest. So I hope that there is now an opportunity to finally release Iran and the Middle East from this menace. One word of caution: since this regime may feel now that its back is to the wall, it may make a dash for a nuclear weapon, and it possibly could try to buy one if they can't produce one. And as several studies have suggested here, if there is any regime capable of a suicidal use of a nuclear weapon, this is the regime. So we also need to be vigilant about that. Now, I'm sure, Mike, that you have a comment about my last remark. So
no, I don't, Gadi. I thought it was all well stated, and I agreed with every word. You can transition cleanly to the next subject.
Thank you for granting the permission, sire. Much appreciated that I can. However, I will use this prerogative to just end this show. So wish us a Happy New Year, Mike. A sane Happy New Year.
I will do that, Gadi, but first we have to ask everyone. We have to ask everyone to like us, to share us, and to subscribe, and to leave a comment as well. because we have to game the algorithm. Help us game the algorithm. YouTube doesn't want all this truth to spread. Its algorithm doesn't want all this truth to spread. So you have to help it spread by liking, sharing, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Even if it's a critical comment about how much I say I still want to hear it. Please. And that will make us as sane as possible under the circumstances.
That was a nice understated punch at the end, Mike. Much appreciated. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for liking, listening, and subscribing to our channel. And may we all have, in Israel, if you want to be very Jewish about this new year, you say leminyanam. So you say the date. If you want to emphasize the fact that you're using a foreign calendar, then you say it's the year 2024 to their count, according to their count. So have a happy 2025 according to the Christian calendar. And we will see you on the, I guess you'll probably see this program already.
To the Christian calendar?
After the dividing line between the years. So let's just end with a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, and to the Christian calendar and to the Galutnik left wing.
Something else to say, Mike, before we are able to conclude.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Goodbye.
Happy New Year.